Coming up.
So he's essentially P. Diddy. She's a total bum. He's the world's biggest potential man, and she should be in hell. Yo, somebody get me out of here, man. Percy Jackson. It's a series we all love and that I grew up absolutely obsessed with. It's filled with wonder, adventure, child soldiers, creative world building. What's not to love? But upon revisiting, you know what else I found it's filled with? Aura merchants, frauds, bums, people who shouldn't be allowed in the school zone. Hello, beautiful people. I'm Tearless Man 39, and today we're going to be looking at the biggest frauds in Percy Jackson. So starting off strong, we have Jason Grace, aka Potential Man the Re-Reckoning. He was supposed to be the replacement main character, the next Percy Jackson, and somehow his ex-girlfriend and his comedy relief sidekick ended up both being more popular and better characters than him. Matter of fact, listen to this. His girlfriend Piper was ensorcelled by the queen of the gods into loving him. Then the goddess of love, who is Piper's mother, ran interference on his behalf to advocate that they get together. But in defiance of two goddesses, Piper still dumps that bum Jason. His personality actually has to be blander than Cracker Barrel, bro. It can't be anything else. He's canonically super handsome, has saved her life multiple times, and has never had a mean word to say towards Piper, and yet she managed to overpower the will of two deities just to not date him. Genuinely might be one of the best feats in the series. Jason was so lame, he inspired Piper to date her first woman. I mean, he was so boring that they didn't even want to show any of his feats on screen. Essentially, everything cool Jason has ever done was off screen. He single-handedly brought the 5th cohort to greatness off screen. He became one of the most popular praetors in history off screen. He toppled the throne of Kronos and killed a titan with his bare hands off screen. I actually don't know who has better off-screen hockey between him and Blackbeard. When we look at what he actually does in the story, though, compared to how he was built up, he's buns. Because there is no way on God's green earth he should be so much weaker than Percy. He grew up in Camp Jupiter, is the son of the most powerful god Zeus, and has just as much regular battle experience as Percy just to get washed by a dude who's been training less than half as long? With all that being said, I can't blame him too much. I actually have a theory for why he's so trash. Fetal alcohol syndrome. Y'all please hear me out. We know his mom Beryl was an alcoholic and that she was also a huge narcissist, so she was probably drinking while he was in the womb. It would also explain why he and his sister, who we'll get to, are so underwhelming. Some of the symptoms include poor coordination, smaller than average brain size, trouble getting along with others, and delayed physical development. Sounds like Jason to me. That or Beryl just has the genetics of Charles II. So in the end, while Jason is the potential man of the century, it's probably not his fault. Still, I understand perfectly why he's the only member of the Seven to actually stay dead when they got killed. Oh yeah, and his bootleg Riptide sucks. Next up, we have Selena Beauregard, and before we start off, Selena Beauregard should be in hell. Full stop. We'll get back to joking soon, but I felt that needed to be said. If you don't remember, Selena was an Aphrodite cabin member who was dating Hephaestus Cabin's Charles Beckendorf, who I'm pretty sure was the first black character in Percy Jackson. Shout out to Swirl, man. Wait, considering what happened next, do not shout out the Swirl. Selena was actually a spy for Kronos the entire time and got her boyfriend Beckendorf blown up alongside passing information that led to the deaths of other demigods. When asked why, a key part of her reasoning was her attraction and affinity towards Luke Castellan. This one might require my Kufi hat. In the end, though, she did in fact die fighting on the right side when she donned the armor of Ares Cabin and slayed the Lydian Draken, one of the most dangerous monsters ever.
Whisper, whisper.
What's that? She didn't kill the Lydian Draken?
Whisper, whisper.
And she didn't even do that much damage to it despite having all of Ares Cabin on her side?
Whisper, whisper.
And in the end, Clarice took it out single-handedly without even wearing her armor?
Whisper, whisper.
Armor she didn't have because Selena stole it and died wearing it? Oh. But honestly, that part isn't even bad. Jokes aside, it wasn't a bad way to go out, and I actually liked the twist. The real problem started after she died. If anything anyone said about Selena after she died was put on the river Styx, Camp Half-Blood would sink straight to Tartarus. Every single camper absolutely refused to talk about her being a rat the entire time and getting countless demigods killed through her betrayal. Every time she comes up, she was a great person, she was real nice, and if you don't agree, you get jumped. Look what happened to Drew Tanaka when she pointed out, hey, maybe we shouldn't venerate someone who sold us all out to a dude who eats babies. Everyone acted like she killed the woman herself. But you want to know what's even worse? She went to heaven after all of that. Not purgatory, not hell, straight to the fields of Elysium, and do you want to know who was waiting for her there? Beckendorf, with open arms. I almost put down the book on reread just for that. You mean to tell me you can betray all your friends, get a bunch of teenagers killed by ungodly monsters, but then you fight and fail to kill one monster, and you're suddenly Nelson Mandela? Like she couldn't have gone to the purgatory fields in Asphodel? Mind you, Hazel was the literal daughter of the guy who runs hell, and when she pleaded for her mom, who basically did the same thing as Selena, all she got was Asphodel. Look, it's gotta be white privilege, pretty privilege, privilege, I don't know, some type of privilege, because ain't no way, bro. Most of this video is exaggerated for jokes. I actually really like everyone else I'll mention, except for someone we'll get to. But Selena actually pisses me off. Talia Grace is all the evidence I need that Beryl Grace drinks when she's pregnant. Even without the example of her little brother, it would be the only explanation for why she's so sorry. Talia might have been the most hyped character in Percy Jackson history. She had connections to Annabeth and our, at the time, main villain Luke. She's the first child of Zeus we ever hear of. The entire second book is just building up to her return, and when she comes back, she's hyped up just like her brother as basically a better Percy. And just like her brother, she's nothing of the sort. She starts out pretty strong in Titan's Curse, but the signs were there even then. Her signature shield Aegis isn't even the real one because she wasn't good enough for it. All she got was a bootleg. And even that was giving us a warning. Her Aegis has zero offensive potential, but manages to scare away monsters based on the fear aura it puts out. They're literally foreshadowing that she's going to be an aura merchant. Then she does the one good feat her fans love to bring up, and that's when she beats Luke. Yeah, barely winning against a crippled child of Hermes who is recovering from holding up the sky while you're one of the strongest demigods in history. Impressive. She also makes way worse use of her powers than Jason. She never even uses her flight. But you know what? At least there's an explanation for that one. She's afraid of heights. Let me repeat that. The daughter of the Sky God, whose powers involve flight and air manipulation, is afraid of heights. Beryl Grace needs to be in jail, man. But whatever, maybe it gets better as the books go on. And maybe pigs will grow some wings. Talia leaves camp to join the holding cell for unwed female characters. I mean, the hunters. And gets blessed by Artemis, making her even stronger than before. She proceeds to essentially do nothing for the next 10 books. She just kind of farts around and makes barely any good use of her powers. Oh sure, she'll pop up here and there to interact with the Seven, who she isn't a part of, by the way. But she doesn't really do much of anything save for Lost Hero. After that, she's too busy getting her hunters cooked by Orion. The beating that this man put on the hunters might be some of the most embarrassing stuff I've seen in history. This was genuinely worse than Lebronto. At a certain point, I think he had a 49 KD ratio. I don't even think Vaughn terrorized any community to this extent. But this didn't actually have to happen. Talia, at any time, could have just asked Daddy Zeus for a lightning bolt, the way we saw Jason do against Enocladus. I would think after the 56th hunter put on his shirt, and with everyone knowing how to kill giants, she'd have thought, hey, maybe I should actually try calling on the strongest god there is, who happens to be my dad, for help. But instead, the hunters have to get bailed out because even 64 hunters can't equal one Reyna. Man, Reyna's so cool. Literally the only thing I can slander her for is that she gave that bum Jason the time of day. Unfortunately, she got sent to the hunters too, so she's probably never going to do anything cool again. Damn shame. Alright, before we get into the next section, I want to make sure that we put a content warning before we jump into this one, as he's less of a fraud and more of a criminal. If you don't like hearing about this guy, or this guy, you won't like hearing about this guy. The timestamp to skip this segment is here. I will be cracking jokes throughout this section, but I just want to say seriously before we start that Anubis' relationship with Sadie is disgusting, and the fact that the series tries to justify it is one of Rick's worst decisions as an author. Now, a lot of y'all are familiar with the Kane Chronicles, but if you aren't, Anubis is the 5,000-year-old god who judges the souls of the afterlife. He starts to explore the world outside the underworld and meets a young lady by the name of Sadie Kane. They hate each other at first, before finally realizing their feelings for each other over the course of 3 books. Classic enemies to lovers, right? Yeah, except for one teensy problem. Sadie Kane is a middle schooler. He made out with her when she was 31, but in reverse, player. The only fantasy series this dude belongs in is 7 Deadly Sins. Or maybe Redo of Healer. And what's worse is, just like Selena, the series tries to justify it. He's actually really young for a god, guys. Our 5,000 is your 16. Well, tough toenails, I ain't buying it. Anubis is literally an all-knowing god, fit to judge the souls of all mortals for thousands of years. Though considering the type of timing he's on, I really hope Epstein got judged by the Greeks or the Romans. Anubis had it his way, they'd probably be exchanging notes. It's just so gross and blatant, it makes me sick. And to top it all off, he takes over the body of Sadie's age-appropriate boyfriend Walt just to get with her. Are there actual legitimate story reasons why that happened? Yes, there are. Am I going to ignore them since a primary reason was dating someone who can't get a driver's license? Yes, I will. Keep Anubis off the streets and away from our schools. Before we get to our last character, it's time to go over some honorable mentions that didn't make the list. Obviously Calypso, since she's basically just female Anubis, but also our PJO trio, Grover, Percy, and Annabeth. Now, before the pitchforks come out, the reason they're here is more a consequence of how much screen time they've gotten. When you show up in that many books, you're going to have your down moments. Grover, for example, is best friends with 2 high schoolers in his late 20s. Now, I'm absolutely not implying he's on any Anubis type timing at all, but it is a tiny bit pathetic when you think about it. Annabeth doesn't have as many down moments as the other 2, but a lot of the time she doesn't really contribute to the situation at hand. A bunch of her plans are literally just stall until Percy gets here. Even Percy, our MC, has some pretty bad moments. I mean, literally 1 book ago, dude pissed his pants because he got scared of Hecate. Not a good look. But what separates them from the characters who actually made the list is that for every bad moment they have 10 great ones. Grover saving Percy and inciting panic. Annabeth holding up the heavens by herself with 0 help. And Percy, name a book. He's perma certified for me off of Son of Neptune alone. Oh yeah, also Annabeth is black now, so even if she was a bum, you wouldn't hear it from me. Shout out Leah Jeffries, don't listen to the haters, and keep your head up. Last on our list isn't going to be one character, but a whole group of them. And that's everyone from Court of the Dead. This one hurts me so badly because Frank, Hazel, and Nico are my top 5 favorite demigods ever. If you haven't read Court of the Dead, it involves Hazel and Frank using their position as praetor to accept refugees into camp. Touching, right? Problem is, they're accepting refugee monsters. And not just any monster. We're talking Impusai. We're talking Eidolons. We're talking the Minotaur. Yes, the Minotaur that tried to kill Percy as a 12-year-old. And we are accepting them into a camp full of demigods they used to kill and torture. Are we doing it because they demonstrated regret for their actions and the ability to change and grow? No! But hey, at least they knit sweaters now. So what if the Minotaur literally used to eat children? Those sweaters are so chic. I usually love Hazel, Nico, and Frank, but it's so insane that they treat their own campers like bigots for not wanting to live and mingle with people who have committed war crimes against their kind. The worst thing I remember a camper doing to a monster is throwing food at them. And by the way, it is monster. I don't care that they want to be called mythics. It's monster, monster, monster with the hardest of R's. And if you don't want to be called that, then maybe don't use your hospitality to literally try and grow your own version of hell in the middle of camp. Oh yeah, I forgot. They're trying to recreate Tartarus in the middle of Camp Jupiter. Look, I hate ICE. Even if my family weren't mostly immigrants, it's disgusting seeing the blatant abuse and violence they inflict every day. I also love that Rick is trying to speak out in his own way and push a good message of acceptance in a time we really need it. But that being said, reading this book, I almost turned into a 57-year-old white Republican after 50 pages. This genuinely might be the worst way I've seen a pro-immigration message integrated into a book since ever. I honestly wish this book was never written, as it's made me lose so much respect for Hazel, Nico, and Frank. Being so real, I never cared enough about Will to be disappointed in him. 2 weeks ago, I made a list of the biggest bums, frauds, and losers in Percy Jackson. And y'all really showed out. But as always, the job is never finished, and you guys suggested even more characters who deserve to be on my list. And potentially another list. Hello, beautiful people. My name is TearlessMan39, and today we're going to go over 4 more of the biggest frauds in Percy Jackson. Starting off, we have someone who I'm sure you all know. An evil too great to even imagine. Someone responsible for economic turmoil the world over. Ladies and gentlemen, you know him. You hate him. Billionaire CEO Jeff Bezos. What's that?
Whisper, 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 whisper.
Wrong, Amazon. Shit! I knew this would happen. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Ladies and gentlemen, I present the Amazons. Funnily enough, I'd rather work with the billionaire CEO before ever in my life joining up with the Percy Jackson Amazons. Before we start, I'd like to make a very brave and unpopular statement that will form the basis for this section. Slavery is bad. Thank you, you're far too kind. Yes, I know I'm a revolutionary. Yes, I know I'm basically the modern Frederick Douglass. But seriously, the fact that I have to even say that while talking about any group of supposedly good characters, or at least characters allied to the main cast, is absolutely insane. The Amazons, if you didn't know, are a group of strong, independent women warriors who take no disrespect. While they start off hostile towards the main cast, they eventually form an allyship that becomes a friendship. They're also literal slave owners. Yes, SLAVE, slave owners. Now, this might come as a teeny bit of a shock, but the Amazons don't like men very much. When we first get into their compound, we see a group of men in orange jumpsuits with steel collars around their necks being forced to work for the Amazons. Everyone is disgusted, but Talia, of course it's Talia, quells our heroes' fears by saying, "Don't worry guys, they're actually not slaves. They're just doing this of their own free will." Anyone who knows me by now knows my thoughts on Talia as a character, so I won't say much besides the fact that she's a failure, a bum, probably has fetal alcohol syndrome, and is not someone to be listened to. I mean, the evidence is right there. These men, to our knowledge, have no known rights, may hold no high position inside the Amazons, and from what we saw Kenzie do to Frank, it's perfectly fine to physically assault a man in their society for even speaking without permission. Sure sounds like free will to me, Talia. So it brings me no sadness to say that on top of being slave owners, the Amazons are frauds as well. Orion spent the entire last book giving the Amazons belt. He took out probably dozens of them in cold blood, and they were barely able to do anything about it despite claiming to be top-tier warriors. And honestly, go Orion. Liberating people from slavery, fighting for freedom and justice for all, trying to end an authoritarian regime with his bare hands before tragically losing his life. Orion's basically just John Brown. Now, am I saying that the Amazons deserve to die and that Orion was totally justified in his actions? I'm not saying that. I'm also not saying that. Amazon fans got shooters out here. I gotta pick my words carefully. But suffice it to say, the Amazons are horrendous, and it is still insane to me that they ever were treated as legitimate allies by our main heroes. But speaking of misandrous girl groups that never do anything, let's talk about Artemis. Artemis is an incompetent cult leader, and her only skill worth mentioning is grooming teenagers. Damn, that's a crazy opener. Not wrong necessarily, but crazy. Even growing up as a kid, I never really liked the Hunters of Artemis. But I always thought that was just because of me being like 8 years old and being in my girls have cooties phase. That's still probably why I hated them, to be honest. But at least I'm retroactively justified now. Let's talk about A. Diddy and her band of merry women. At the end of the day, she actively spends her time looking for middle schoolers to sign their life away and join the Hunters, a permanent, lifelong commitment. Never grown women, never anyone who could reasonably consent and analyze the consequences, always little girls. She cuts them off from their support system, family, and friends to make them fight for her. I promise you, anyone with the processing power of a dim bulb would have Euro-stepped their way out of there pronto. You gotta admit, that looks shady as shit, bruh. Imagine if that were a god instead of a goddess doing this. Like imagine if Zeus, for example, was out here hunting for 12-year-olds. I mean, that would be... Oh. Well, if there's one thing I'll never doubt, it's Zeus's inability to keep it in his pants. I think that brings us to probably the worst moment Artemis has had in the books. Now, a lot of you might never have read Percy Jackson's Greek Gods, but there's a little story in there that exemplifies everything wrong with Artemis and how she runs the Hunters. So Artemis was cool with this huntress named Callisto. Not just cool, actually. They were best friends, Bill and Ted type shit. But Zeus thought Callisto was kinda bad. So he decides to ask if she's trying to, get down to clown. And Callisto, being a huntress of Artemis, obviously says no. Duh. Unfortunately, to put it in ad-friendly terms, they do end up getting down to clown, even though Callisto's answer was still no. Next time I'm making a Zeus section. So obviously, Callisto decides to hide the pregnancy from the Hunters because she doesn't want to be forced out and lose her literal only support system, since everyone she knows besides the Hunters is probably dead and gone. And she probably doesn't want to tell her best friend Artemis that her father did what he did to her. But eventually, Artemis finds out and actually lets her retire from the Hunters peacefully and confronts her dad. I'm just kidding. She actually turns Callisto into a bear, banishes her from the Hunters, and tells her she has a kill-on-sight order. Brother, what? I might have to give Beryl Grace some slack. I see where Talia gets her fraudulence from now. Artemis genuinely moves like a 4chan incel more than a girl boss. You threatened to boom your friend, took away her support system, and worst of all, so much worse, you made her a furry! Like, at that point, just kill me. I'm just playing, y'all. I have been cured of any and all furry racism by my glorious goat, Sonic Fox. But seriously, that's genuinely so disgusting. I know basically all the Greek gods have their serious issues, but the difference with Artemis is she's held up, at least relatively, as one of the most benevolent deities in the series. And one of her big things is protecting women from the evils of men. I'd rather take color theory classes from Stevie Wonder than fall under Artemis's protection as a woman. Now, I've been going pretty hard on the ladies as of late, so I figured I have to shift my focus to the men for these last two. Coming up, we actually have Chiron of all people. Believe me, I'm as surprised as you are. I actually really messed with Chiron when I first read the series, but he was probably the most requested character we had after the last video. So I figured I'd do some research, and what I found shocked me. I'm sorry to say it, but Chiron is ass. Worse than that, he's secret ass. He manages somehow to fool everyone into thinking he's some wise and competent teacher, when in reality, he's Tony Snell. He might be the most fake useful mentor since Kakashi. 90% of this dude's screen time is just spouting mysterious lines and looking wise. He's basically a four-legged fortune cookie. Like, dude just sits on his ass and acts mysterious. He might have been more useful in the first half of Lightning Thief than he was for the rest of the series. I got Dom the Fawn over mid to late series Chiron. Whenever he has a chance to do anything useful, there's always an oath or a vow or a threat that means he gets a free pass to send 12-year-olds to die while he sits on his butt and plays bingo. Hey Chiron, why didn't you ever tell us about the camp of Roman demigods like 2 hours away? Because I made an oath, my child. Hey Chiron, why didn't you tell us about that world-changing prophecy earlier? Because I made an oath, my child. Hey Chiron, why'd you let that hellhound eat that kid during a training exercise? Because it was kind of fun. He who hungers for battle never laddles? What does that even mean? How do you spell ladles? Heh. When you reflect on these words, my actions shall become clear to you. Now I must, do mentory things. Yes! Secure the future of the camp and all that. Toodaloo! Poof. I'm still stuck on ladles. And look, I get that most of this is the fault of the Olympians, but it's been 3,000 years, and you've been sworn to secrecy for decades, if not centuries in most of these cases. In all that time, you couldn't figure out charades, my brother? On top of being useless, and despite his job being to mentor kids, he kind of just has zero empathy. Like when Percy woke up after almost being killed by the Minotaur, and to he and Chiron's knowledge, his mom just died. Percy, understandably, has a bit of trouble believing everything that just happened and is in denial. So Chiron says, and I quote, when Percy doubts the myths, "What if I told you, Percy Jackson, that some people will call you a myth to explain how little boys can get over losing their mothers?" I'm sorry, what, bro? Percy a better man than me, because personally, I'm pushing his wheelchair over for that. Would Mr. D smite me? Yeah, but that's so insane. All this, by the way, to make a point to a grieving 12-year-old. He also says after 10-year-old Nico disappears from camp that he hoped he got eaten by monsters because it was preferable to him joining the opposing army. Beyond his lack of empathy, his negligence shows in a billion other ways, like under-equipping quest-going campers, or that time he lied to a bunch of 11-year-olds and threw them into a battle he said was a field trip. But I think one of his dumbest moments was sanctioning the three-legged death race in Trials of Apollo. Now, demigods, of course, need to train in relatively dangerous circumstances to simulate what they'll face in the field. But that's like sparring or extreme capture the flag or whatever. This dude had these campers running a three-legged race in the labyrinth. Yes, the labyrinth. You know, the sentient, semi-carnivorous death maze that literally bleeds from the walls and actively tries to kill all who enter? The place described as one of the most evil inventions in all of creation? But guess what? It's fine now, because the labyrinth seems chill. That's the justification. Never mind that the camp is already low on numbers. Never mind that we've had multiple disappearances in like the past month. I'm sure none of that will be exacerbated by the race. After all, how could anyone disappear in the labyrinth? As you can probably imagine, the labyrinth was, in fact, still evil. You would think that being 3,000 would give you the foresight of a somewhat gifted 7-year-old, but apparently not. Chiron, I really did mess with you, but it's safe to say you're a lot more of a Dumbledore than a Sensei Wu. Before we get to the last entry on our list, I just wanted to ask that you please like, share, and subscribe. If you do, you're goated and sexy and your booty is fat. I also just started a community Discord, link in the description below. With that being said, let's get into our most infamous entry yet. Oh, Lukey Pookie. Where do I begin? What details should I hit you with first? I mean, I guess let's go with the fact that your goals made 0 sense. Which, hey, if he were perfectly morally consistent, he wouldn't be a villain. On the surface, I'm actually sympathetic to Luke's cause. You already know my thoughts on some of the gods, and the ones I haven't covered yet ain't too much better. Trying to overthrow the gods is actually a pretty valid goal. The problem is, why the heck would you throw your hat in with a dude known for eating babies? Like Luke, you are a grown-ass man, and despite your dyslexia, I do assume you can read at least a little. But for a pretty decent portion of time, Luke genuinely thought Kronos, of all people, was on his side. And some way, somehow, he gets surprised when Kronos of all people betrays him and stops being very nice. Aww. Breaking news! President of the Leopards Eating People's Faces Party decided to eat my face. Who could have seen this coming? There's also the fact that he's 23 years old trying to mess with a 16-year-old. This dude was so freaked that he used his literal dying moments with Annabeth to ask if she ever loved him. Yes, I know people have said that their relationship was a sibling one. And I'd agree. Luke just figured that this story was taking place in Alabama instead of New York. Heck, Annabeth had to be the one to clarify that she was never in love with Luke and that she only ever thought of him as a brother. If the question was whether she platonically loved him, newsflash, there'd be zero reason for her to add that. And that's another thing. Luke can't even groom right. Like, it's not that hard for real in the Percy Jackson universe. Like, look at Anubis, or Artemis, or Calypso. Apparently, there's no such thing as demigod CPS. He really puts the L in El Diddy. This dude is so garbage that just killing him was enough to make you go to heaven instantly. Like, the world acknowledged he was such a loser that no matter who got rid of him, they would be absolved of all their sins in life. Luke, who's responsible for war crimes, mass homicide, etc., got to go to Elysium or Rebirth just for booming himself. I think that tells you everything you need to know about Buddy. Well, here's a picture of the Percy Jackson Olympians. Got it? Okay, now here's a picture of all the Olympians that weren't on Epstein's island. It's no secret that Percy Jackson's gods are some of the most disturbed, vile, and frankly pretty weird deities in all of fiction. Despite being alleged good guys, they're responsible for stuff that makes Sukuna call the cops. Or in other words, they're actually pretty accurate to Greek mythology. But among them, there exists a special few even more terrible, incompetent, or just straight up more annoying than the rest. Hello beautiful people, I'm TearlessMan39, and today we're going to be looking at the biggest frauds in Percy Jackson, the gods. Starting off, we have the king himself, the god of gods, Sky Daddy, or more accurately, Sky Diddy. Listen, I don't even know where to begin when it comes to the shit Zeus has pulled over the years, but I think the best place to start has to be his lightning rod. If you look far enough back into any problem in this series, there's a 99% chance it's because Zeus couldn't keep it in his pants. My guy is overly freaked out. He's like a terrorist at a vegan rally. He just slings meat at everything that moves. You're a woman, you're getting meat. You're a man, you're getting meat. You're a rather seductive looking tree, meat on meat on meat. And it's so weird how he goes about it too. This nigga will do anything to him. He's turned into a swan to get some cheeks, an ant to get some cheeks, a cuckoo bird to get some cheeks, a bull to get some... Okay, cut the beat. This is even a Zeus problem at this point. What the fuck was going on with these ancient Greeks? Like, I'm looking at this list of Zeus's partners and children, and he's damn near had more hookups as a beast than a god. Is that really what these Greek women were messing with? Well, unfortunately, the answer is only sometimes. As you probably got from the name Sky Diddy, the list of women Zeus has slept with is a lot longer than the list of women who wanted to. We're not going to get too deep into it, but Zeus has done a lot of things that should get him put under the jail. But speaking of horrible crimes, let's talk about his rules for thee, but not for me attitude. You see, I wasn't lying earlier when I said Zeus keeping it in his pants could have saved humanity. As we found out, children of Zeus and his brothers Hades and Poseidon were causing too much carnage in the mortal world. So, after World War II, they formed a pact to have no more kids. A pact which Zeus very emphatically proved by trying to 360 no-scope Hades' children, despite them being born before the pact. Now you'd think with how hardline he'd been about this little agreement, he'd at least keep to it himself. But of course, and say it with me now, Zeus couldn't keep it in his pants. Not only did he break the pact once, he broke it twice. He had 2 kids by Beryl Grace, and besides maybe some of the freaky stuff from earlier, this might be the single worst crime Zeus has ever committed. Not only did he break the oath he made with his brothers, not only were these children a threat to the world just by being born, not only did he hardly take any precautions to keep them safe, but worst of all, both of his kids are trash.
Brother,
Imagine risking all that, going back on your word just to have a kid who's out here at them Artemis parties, and another one who got victimized by a flying brick. And despite all his massive flaws, Zeus has the nerve, the gall to take his anger out on everything else that moves. He rules the gods with an iron fist because they're all too scared to challenge him. Meanwhile, this dude is a paper tiger. He brags all the time that he took on Typhon solo dolo back in the day. No help, no hacks, no nothing. So of course when Typhon comes back, Zeus goes back out there and easily handles him solo, right? Right? I'm just kidding. He actually was so scared he took every Olympian he could find as backup and he still got put on his back. What a bum, man. Now Zeus is obviously the king of frauds, but at least he's competent some of the time. You know who can't even claim that? You know, Ares gets a lot of flack, and I know he's on this list, but I actually want to defend him a little bit. You see, one thing I hate about the gods is the way they hurt children, whether through abuse or neglect or even worse. So it was really kind of Ares, really generous of him to break that trend, reverse that cycle, and get his ass beat by a 12-year-old for a change. I don't even know how you can call yourself the god of war after letting a middle schooler push you to high diff in a sword fight. A middle schooler who's been training for less than a year, mind you. The literal embodiment of violence and carnage, and you got belt from a kid whose balls haven't dropped. Now Percy's cold, don't get me wrong, but I can't even count on my hands the number of times a way older, way stronger Percy had more trouble with regular monsters and minor gods than with a literal Olympian. But that's not really anything new for Ares. Whether in the actual myths or the Percy Jackson books, the best thing I could describe Ares as is a butt monkey, a jobber, the Worf effect personified. For all his hype, for all his statements, Percy Jackson Ares is a lot less DC Ares and a lot more Marvel Ares, or Record of Ragnarok Ares, or God of War Ares. Actually, most versions of Ares I can think of are butt monkeys. Matter of fact, can anyone watching this put in the comments a fight Ares won during the series? Not even just Percy Jackson, I will expand that to literally any Rick Riordan book. As far back as my memory goes, this dude has done nothing but puff out his chest just to get that hoe deflated immediately by anybody he fights. But hey, whatever. You can't win them all, right? Besides, he still has his super powerful demigod children. Ares' captain is hyped up as a force of nature in the books. I mean, after all, since he's so good at getting his ass beat by children, he should be great at teaching children to beat other people's asses. Small problem. None of his kids can fight. Well, except for Clarice, none of his kids can fight. Despite their heritage as children of the literal war god, they inherited all of his incompetence and none of the deadliness. I truly think that if you put Ares' cabin against even Aphrodite cabin, these guys will get torn in half. I'm not joking either. Selena Beauregard alone would belt 99% of the Ares kids. And if you've watched my other videos, you know how much it pains me to say that. And Piper? That's not even a question. She could just tell them to use their own swords as toilet paper and that's that. Seriously, you have to go so far down the list to find a cabin that Ares beats. No one lives in Zeus, Artemis, or Hera cabin, so they don't count. Poseidon and Hades mean dealing with Percy and Nico, which... no. Hermes' cabin has too many kids, Apollo has more relevant named demigods than any other cabin, Hephaestus' cabin tortures them with any number of inventions, Athena cabin has Annabeth, heck, even Demeter cabin, the gardening demigods, win just off the back of Meg McCaffrey. I think the only Olympic cabin these guys can take is maybe Dionysus, and that's because they only have one camper. Two Pollux and they really might have something to worry about. Now Ares is a fraud god, but at least he's just a normal god. You know who's supposed to be above the gods? The Primordials. We're going to step away from the Olympians for a second though and talk about their alleged greatest enemy. An ancient evil from before time had a name. A being so powerful that even the Olympians could never stand before her. A monster who even while asleep destroyed the lives of hundreds if not thousands of demigods and raised an army of terrible giants who had to be slain by gods and half-bloods in tandem. Ladies, gentlemen, and those beyond the binary, be afraid of the scourge of the cosmos, enemy of the gods, the very earth herself, Gaia. Compared to her, no villain comes close. Kronos, irrelevant. Typhon, insignificant. Should Gaia wake up, humanity and Olympus alike would end within an instant. No one could possibly stop her. Well, unless you're a pair of 16-year-olds with less than a year of training. In that case, stopping her should take a minute, maybe two at most. Gaia really might have been the most overly gassed up villain I've ever seen in my life. From the moment we heard of her, it was made super clear that she was nothing like we'd ever seen before. The Primordials weren't beings to be fought or dealt with, they were immutable forces of nature that nobody could stop. The goal wasn't even to defeat Gaia, it was to stop her from even waking up and being able to fight in the first place. If she woke up, that was supposed to be GG's f***ers. And considering that the giants who she killed at a moment's notice were giving our heroes so much trouble, I believed it at first. If Gaia woke up, it was over. But then, she actually did wake up, and got packed up in the first minute she was on screen. Piper swooped in and sung her a lullaby, and just like that, she was back to sleep. Then Leo Valdez, of all people, blew himself up, and that was it. 5 books of hype for a 1-chapter ass whooping. Awoken Gaia didn't catch a single body. She put up no buckets. She didn't score. Even Leo, who literally sacrificed his life to pull the win, ended up coming back to life and even getting a date with the queen of groomers herself, Calypso. She really needs to get her own section next time. Compare that performance to her boyfriend Tartarus. Now that's a real primordial. House of Hades had Percy and Annabeth stressing in the dirt just trying to leave Tartarus. Not kill Tartarus, leave Tartarus. Even surviving being near him is considered one of their best feats in the entire series. Meanwhile, Gaia got packed up by some dirty talking and exploding dwarf. I'm more scared of Coach Hedge at this point than I ever was of Gaia. But look, I could sit here all day going through every single god and find something crazy. I really could. Matter of fact, before our last section, I think I will. To get it out of the way, we're going to cover some of the more general problems with the gods and address some of the ones who didn't make the list. For one, basically every god is a deadbeat. Even Artemis, the virgin goddess, doesn't do shit to protect the kids under her watch. And before you come at me, let me ask y'all something. You ever wonder why there's only like 30 hunters of Artemis? I mean, after all, they live forever and they've been recruiting new members for thousands of years. You don't find it a little strange that they only have a classroom's worth of people? They're closer to a football team than a battalion. That means A, either every hunter ever is doing the dash at the earliest opportunity, which I can't blame them for, or B, working for Artemis has a higher mortality rate than Ebola. But I've ragged on Artemis enough in the first two parts. As much as I clowned Zeus, besides Artemis, literally all of the Olympians are massively horny weirdos. Like, they are physically incapable of keeping it in their togas, and if they like you and they want you, you can do it either the easy way or the hard way.
The choice is yours.
Finally, every single one of them are psychopaths. You can find at least one story for every single one of them where they get rage baited into carpet bombing a daycare or something because a 2-year-old forgot to give them an offering from their animal crackers. But the one and only exception to the rule is my goat Hestia. She's not out here popping out unwanted kids. She's not out here getting rage baited into nuclear airstrikes. As far as I know, she actually respects consent. All she does is tend to her hearth and be on some chill shit. She even liked this video and subscribed to the channel, which you should do too if you want to be goated, sexy, and have a fat booty just like Hestia. But her being the exception to the rule just makes it that much worse because it means the gods don't have to be like this. It means the gods choose every second of every millennia to be pieces of shit. But there does exist one Olympian who, despite being the worst of the worst, managed to break the cycle. Someone who learned empathy, kindness, and more importantly, how to stop being a fraud. Let me regale you with the curious tale of Apollo. Now, if you've been following this channel, you know that a certain commenter has been asking me to cover this guy for the past 8 videos. And I honestly really didn't want to, until I started doing some revisiting of Trials of Apollo. Apollo might have had the single greatest character arc in any Rick Riordan book. Now, for those of you who've only read the original Percy Jackson books or the Heroes of Olympus, your impression of Apollo probably isn't the greatest. To sum it up, he's a douchebag. He's a pompous, arrogant, creepy loser. If Trials had never dropped, I'd have put him down as another fraudulent Olympian without a second thought. But due to his role in the conflict against Gaia, Sky Diddy himself decided to snatch Apollo's chain and send him to Earth as immortal, leaving him as a pompous, arrogant, creepy, ugly loser. That's actually what really gets to him at first. More than the loss of his powers, more than being cut off from his family, it's the fact that he's chopped. Also that his name got changed to Lester Papadopoulos, which, to be fair, would have killed me too. But Apollo also lost a lot of his memories when he got turned into a human, and he had to get them back by way of interacting with the people he'd hurt. And it turns out, that was a whole lot of people. Over the course of the series, we meet dozens of people that Apollo has hurt, ranging from the people he fucked to the ones he just fucked over. And as he comes to terms with it, he actually comes to the realization that he'd been a trash person for thousands of years. But instead of curling into a ball, my guy Apollo went on to save the world, slime out Python, stand up to Zeus, and get his godhood back, all while making amends along the way to everyone he'd hurt. And even when he finally became a god again, did he switch up? Did he ignore the people who helped him? Nope, he stayed locked in and loyal to the soil. He proved that despite their age and their nature, the Olympians can change, they can grow, they can be better, they just choose to be frauds. But if you want to see how fraudulent the children of the gods are, you can check out my other Percy Jackson fraud videos here. All featured artists are in the pinned comment. I love all you beautiful people, and I'll see you next time.